Okay, in rugby union news, South African fly half Pat Lambie has announced his immediate retirement due to concussion. He's had a string of concussions since 2016, and the symptoms he's feeling are more and more serious each concussion. I read the article on BBC Sport. It came up in my Twitter feed. It wasn't on the main headlines of BBC Sport because obviously the Australian Open is on and the English Premier League had two big games today. But I found the article on Twitter, and whilst I was at the Bracknell Bees game this evening, which we lost badly to Basingstoke 6-2, which was infuriating, and it was in a breaking play, and I thought I'll look at my Twitter feed, and this came up, and I read through the article, and he suffered his first serious concussion whilst playing against Ireland in international rugby in 2016. CJ Stander, the Irish flanker of South African origin, they went in for a tackle or a collision, and obviously Pat Lambie has come out on the wrong side of that and was concussed. He then had another concussion in training with the Sharks in the Super Rugby before he signed with Racing 92, formerly known as Racing Metro, in the French top 14, where he's had several more concussions. The thing is, when he did sign and left the Sharks and went to Racing in the top 14, he was made no secret of the issues he was having with the concussion symptoms and post-concussion syndrome. He was struggling in the weights room, he was struggling in training, he was struggling in games. And for those who are hardcore rugby union fans, Pat Lambie never used to wear a scrum cap. The last 2-3 years of his career, he's wearing the scrum cap. Now, I watched a game last year, admittedly on the internet, and he looked very nervous going into contact. He did not look comfortable going into contact, be it in an attacking sense with the ball or in a defensive sense making a tackle. He was not as physical as he was before 2016. You can see a definite change in his demeanour and his confidence around ruck, maul and tackle area. He did not look comfortable. He looked more nervous, he looked within himself and was less willing to make the big hit in defence. That should have been making alarm bells ringing because even though Pat Lambie's not the biggest player, he would never shirk away from contact. He's a South African. South Africans don't shirk away from contact when it comes to rugby union, and you could tell something was not right with Pat Lambie for quite some time. The issue is, Racing, it appears, from what I'm gathering from his interview that he gave and the reasons why he's announced his retirement, were fully aware of the concussion issues he was struggling with in training, in the gym, on the training pitch, in games. He was not right, and he was saying, my legs feel like jelly, can't see straight, can't sleep, I feel nauseous, I've got tingling sensation down my back and my arms, my ears keep ringing, my eyesight keeps getting a bit blurry. These should be alarm bells ringing. Now, rugby union is not the only sport that has a concussion issue. All contact sports have this concern in the background. Obviously, the CTE lawsuit in North America with the NHL and NFL has raised the spectre of head injuries and player welfare. And there are now more concussion protocols in place at top level pro sport. Now, as someone who's been concussed themselves, and I shouldn't have played on in the game that I played in when I was concussed, it's not a nice experience. Disorientation, your legs literally turn to jelly, your balance goes. It is a horrible feeling when you know you're sober, but you feel like you're about to throw up because you feel like you are drunk. That's the best way I can describe having a concussion. Sometimes concussions, the symptoms can take a few weeks to surface, or you can feel them straight away. The misnomer is people think if you're knocked out, you're concussed. That is not necessarily the case. You don't have to be concussed if you're knocked out. You can be knocked out cold and have no concussion. You can take a body shot, and the whiplash effect and the force going through your body can concuss you. The thing is, Pat Lambie have been complaining of these symptoms for the better part of 3 years, and his coaches at international and club level clearly were aware of it. The clubs and the South African side were aware that he had taken several serious head knocks over a very short spell of time, and they were still wanting him to play. The fact he couldn't even lift weights without on the verge of collapse says that is a player welfare issue. I think the concussion protocols need to be stricter. Even if a player has passed the HIA, he in my eyes, should not return to the game. And I also believe independent doctors should do that HIA. Away from the club or country, independent doctors should do the HIA assessment, because we have seen the HIA assessment be abused in the past, and I've watched games where a player is clearly sparked, he's out, and he's clearly concussed or clearly hurt, and somehow has passed an HIA when you know that guy is not right. That player should not play on. I made a reference to an older video when Clermont Auvergne were playing Northampton Saints in a European Cup game. Morgan Parra, he was steamrolled. He went in for a tackle and he was steamrolled by the Northampton player. He somehow managed to play on in that game. He should have failed that HIA straight up. The refereeing in that game, I will admit, was poor, and I did a video on that, and I really ranted and raved. It was shocking for me to see a player laid out on the floor, struggling to get to his feet, stayed on the pitch for several more minutes before the team doctor and the team physio said head knock. The referee then wasn't sure if he should return to the plane because he'd spent more than enough time off the field with the HIA, and then he was allowed to play on. So it's a failure on the official's part, and it's also a fail on his team's part as well. This issue with concussion is not going away. There's already a big debate about the tackle area and the height of tackle and the ruck and maul and the clear out. There are some good rules in place and there are some silly rules in place. I think common sense needs to take over. But Pat Lambie has unfortunately his career cut short at the age of 28. He could have had up to 5 to 10 years if he had been injury free of playing time ahead of him at the top level, and that has been cruelly taken away from him. But the warning signs were there for the better part of 3 years, and no one acted upon it until the player acted himself. And at the end of the day, I don't care what team you support or teams you like or dislike, what players you like or dislike. This is a serious crisis within contact sport and pro sport. We're seeing lawsuits all over the place, from the NFL through to non-league football, soccer. We've seen a whole host of changes within sport when it comes to head injury assessments, but there has to be a minimum time layoff because concussion can take several weeks or even a month to sneak up on a player. And the fact that he mentioned in the weights room, so he's not on the field, he's not doing any contact training, in the weights room he could barely lift the smaller weights and go on the treadmill without collapsing. The warning signs were there. It is a crying arse shame he's had to retire. It is unfortunate, it is sad, and he was one of my favourite players. He played the game in the right way. He's not a dirty player, he may not be the biggest player, but he was exceptionally skilled, exceptionally talented, and is well respected in the game. The fact that he's taken the decision himself after seeking advice from 2 independent neurologists, and they said, no, you've got to stop, you will kill yourself. It wasn't the club doctor he went to see. He felt he could not trust the club doctor, so he went to 2 separate individual brain doctors, neurologists, and both of them said, you're going to die if you keep doing this. Your health is more important than earning a large sum of money in the top 14. Pro sports need to have some kind of medical pension scheme set aside, because players could retire because they keep breaking their hand, for Christ's sake, or they keep having muscular problems. But a player retiring because of a known health issue that has been going on for quite some time is a failure of World Rugby and the various federations he has played under, be it the South African Federation, the Super Rugby, the Top 14, the French Federation. They have let the player down. It was only on his own initiative, going to independent doctors, that he got the result he needed, because he's 28, he could live to 80. If he spends the last 10, 15 years of his life as a vegetable, this is on World Rugby, because they're not strict enough of enforcement, basically, of rules to protect players. And it is a crying arse shame, and I think World Rugby, the IIHF in ice hockey, the FIFA in world football or soccer, the NFL, a whole host of sports need to take this issue far more seriously and stop denying that taking regular blows to your head doesn't cause health problems. We know it does. It doesn't take a genius to work out bashing your brain a lot is going to hurt. It's going to affect your quality of life. And I look at the amount of ex-pro players in contact sports, and their average life expectancy isn't as high as it could be. They're dying off in their 50s to 70s. Whereas in other sports that are maybe less physical, snooker, they can live to their 90s. I'm looking at the facts. Physical sports take a toll on the body, and I look at the ex-players who retired and play with distinction. They may never have been laid off because of concussion, but their life expectancy post-retirement is not as high as the general population around them. So there we go. Sad news that Pat Lambie's had to retire from rugby, but there's some serious issues being raised, and this is my opinion. Now, people are going to disagree with my opinion. That's not saying he's soft. He's for a fly half, he is a hard bloke. You know, he didn't shirk away from the physicality, but you notice in the last couple of years of his career, he was less confident around the breakdown, less confidence in defence about, do I make the tackle, and also less confident in attack. One of the reasons why he never played for the Springboks again when he went to the top 14, even though he had the quota of caps necessary to be selected. Coaches saw that he was less confident around the contact area, be it defence or attack. And that weighs on a coach's mind. Is this player going to be putting his heart in his sleeve and putting his body on the line? That weighs on a coach's mind. But also, if he's not fully fit and can't contribute, he's going to get less game time. So there's a big concern in everything. Thank you very much for watching. This is a very serious issue that top level sport needs to look at. It doesn't take a genius to work out. If you keep bashing your head, you're going to hurt yourself. And quality of life is clearly important. He's been suffering now for nearly 3 years. This is not right. This is wrong. And he's taken the right decision. Or admittedly, it's a sad decision when a player has to retire because of injury, but it's the right one. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Place your thoughts. If you have been concussed playing any level of sport, amateur or professional, semi-pro, please put that in the comments section because I'm really interested to see the feedback people give. And not everyone's going to agree with my opinion, and I accept that, but I think World Rugby, and include any federation of any contact sport, needs to do a lot more into research into head injuries, and also they need to set up some kind of player welfare fund as part of their retirement. These guys, some of them have very short careers, and at the lower levels they don't earn a lot of money. They need to be looked after because this is a ticking time bomb of a health issue. Good night all.